Hello and welcome everyone. This is the MLOps.community podcast. I am your host, Dimitri Os, and today I was joined by Vishnu as a co-host, but he had to bounce real fast, so I am doing this one solo, the recap, the intro of our conversation with the CEO of Neptune, Piotr. I found a few things fascinating about this conversation. I think Vishnu had some key takeaways that he relayed to me too. The first thing that I loved is how he is navigating and how he is effectively steering the ship through the incredible amount of changes that are happening when it comes to the machine learning and AI space, and where he plays and what his tool has traditionally played in this idea of experiment tracking or metadata management. And so being a CEO of a company that is trying to navigate these waters, I thought he had some gems that he took away, or that I took away from it. And I don't want to give any spoilers, so I'm going to let you come to your own conclusions. But it's nice to see how he thinks and see how he decides to make decisions. That being said, of course, we talked about traditional MLOps and Neptune and the way that they have brought themselves to the table. And now what they're looking at when it comes to LLMs and how that changes in the product vision and in the product that they are creating for data scientists and machine learning engineers. So let's jump into this conversation. Before we do, I have one ask for you, just one, and that is you share this episode with just one friend so that we can keep the good word spreading about all of this knowledge and wisdom we are sharing on this podcast. That's it. Let's get into it. Piotr, great to have you here. I'm super excited to talk all about LLMs and how you all at Neptune are doing some wild stuff with that and where your vision is. And you just said something before we started talking that I feel like we have to address right now. It's almost the elephant in the room. And you studied with Sam Altman. And can you
not with Sam, with Wojciech Zaremba.
Oh, that's a little different there. Okay, who's Wojciech and what is going on? Why is he connected with Sam?
Okay. Wojciech is one of the co-founders of OpenAI, and he's more like I think he's still leading the research group there. And so I would say initial brain behind when it comes to research and science. Actually, there are quite a few of my friends from studies and also from competitive programming times, because I used to be, let's call it a professional player in competitive programming. It was not about data science, it was not Kaggle, it was classical algorithms. By the way, there is my professor from times when I studied math and computer science. He had a kind of upgraded version of a Turing test, and the upgraded version is when like the bot when the algorithm would be able to qualify to national level of Olympiad informatics. And we are not there yet. Like, this question was asked today to Wojciech, and we are not there yet. Wojciech predicts that in this decade it will happen, but it is not yet obvious how it will be done. So even for you guys who are behind large language models, the capabilities and the projection, like, we definitely, people feel that it is not the end. We'll be able to do more. Like Wojciech did today comparison to sigmoid function and where are we in the curve of progress. If it was represented by sigmoid function, he bet that in the middle. So it means that quite likely we'll see significant progress in the next few months, years, but it should flatten. I think it is similar how to deep learning wave maybe 7 years ago or so, when deep learning was kind of in the basement for years. Like, the techniques, neural networks are old, right? But nobody was talking about it. Then there was the we noticed, okay, this is possible. More people focus on it. There were more investment, and then the progress started like booming. And to some extent, like, yes, we can always say that large language models are still deep learning models, but it is a different game. It is a different scale.
Yeah.
I think it is not fair to really compare them, even though we are technically wise, to some extent similar.
Yeah. So you undersell yourself a little bit there on the professional aspect of your informatics abilities. I read somewhere that you were what? You were an Olympiad for Poland in your informatics. What's that all about?
I had silver medal on a national level
Mm.
while I was in high school. It is where, by the way, this Polish Olympiad informatics and this whole competitive programming community, it is what it gave me so much, because on one hand, because of that, I was able to go to any university in Poland. So I picked the best one for this type of studies. And consequently, I was able to meet like the smartest guys in this field, nationally, but also internationally, because when I was a student, I was also competing in competition like Google Code Jam, Facebook Hacker Cup. So it gave me, I would say, some level of confidence that, I am also quite smart, right? So I can try. I'm not afraid to try to build my own company, etc., etc. So it gave me a lot.
Talk to us a little bit more about building your own company. You've done a few companies, and now, yeah, exactly. You've got a few. Tell us about those, and then now you're on Neptune, and how did that transpire?
So I started my, let's say, entrepreneurial background when I was still studying. One day I decided that I am done with competitive programming, because quite likely I after being top 30 worldwide in Google Code Jam, I got offer from most of the big companies in the valley. So this kind of goal, being able to work as a software engineer in companies that I respect and was kind of done. So I decided, let's start my first company. At that time, I was still a student. I wanted to finish my studies. And I studied in Poland. And in Poland, the VC ecosystem at that time didn't really exist. Maybe there was something, but so I had to have money to build stuff. So I decided to create the first company that will be able to generate money to build product company. And it is how my first company, like I'm co-founder Codyline, this company that specializes in software-defined networking. So networking, but not hardware, more something in between hardware and software. And it was 12 years ago. It's supposed to be a small company at the beginning. It was the plan. But today it is over 400 people company, highly profitable.
Wow.
And growing. I'm not obviously anymore operationally involved, because I'm focused on Neptune, but my brother is CEO, and my friends who co-founded this company with me we are still close, and I am still major shareholder. So it was one company. A few years later, I think 7 years ago, I co-founded deepsense.ai, that would be one of the leading consulting firms in Europe. The idea, let's focus on data science. Actually, I need to give credit to Wojciech Zaremba again. It was after we met in San Francisco, and he was at that time pursuing PhD around deep learning. And he was always, I need to admit that Wojciech was always a believer, a visionary when it comes to capabilities of those models. Today, it is easy to say, they are amazing, whatever is possible. It is easy. It was, but 8 years ago, it was not so easy. And I kind of felt that he might be right. And when I look at the time, cybersecurity was big. I think blockchain, maybe it was before blockchain wave. Definitely big data was a thing. But I felt that being able to do something relevant with the data quite likely will be a game changer. So a way how you would Like if I were just an individual person without a company, quite likely I would start studying deeper deep learning. As a company, as a founder that had already a company, I decided to do both. On one hand, I wanted to get hands-on and understand those concepts deeper. On the other hand, I thought maybe it would be better to do it together with other folks. So I co-founded a company that's decided to specialize just in this field. And we started from participating in Kaggle competitions to get to the level that we say, okay, like we can build world-class models. Maybe it's time to start providing service around it. So it is the other company. And from DeepSense, it is the place where Neptune was basically created, the first version. It was internal tool. It wasn't my idea, to be honest. One of the data scientists who also participated with me in Polish Olympiad Informatics, he created experiment tracker combined with some infrastructure management layer.
Mm-hmm.
So because today it would be rather a bad idea because cloud providers made the API and the way you can use hardware for training way easier. But 7 or 6 years ago, it was not like that. It was very engineering heavy type of API and experience. So yeah, it is how it started. I can tell you more about it, but long story short, from 2 consulting companies, I finally got once I saw the problem and felt that this problem can be something that is not just DeepSense related. I talk with my friends who are data scientists or data science leader in other companies. How do you you're building models. How do you manage it? And I heard very often what is still, I would say, pretty popular solution today. I'm using a spreadsheet, like homegrown type of solutions. So it's usually a good signal that if you hear it, that many people do it, that signal for a problem. A different story whether there would be a sustainable business around it, right? But for a problem, it was a good signal. So it is how Neptune was started.
So talk to me real fast about this. It's a bit of a tangent, but I got to ask it. When you meet somebody outside of Poland, like in the US, and you are chatting with them and they also have passions that line up with yours, is it like you all are in this small club? It's like we're the 2 Polish people that are in the US that actually care about deep learning, and you give each other a bit of a head nod and you're on the same team?
To be honest, it wouldn't be. I think it is changing now because it was never a Polish thing for me. So I didn't care so much, right? Like if the guy was from Poland or not. But it used to be more if I met somebody who was really doing something with machine learning even a year ago in a kind of random occasion. I'm not talking conference around MLOps, right? But random occasion, like it was still a small club of people who were following the space. With large language model, it has changed. Like 2 days ago, I was using Uber and the driver brought the topic of AI. So it is a signal that it got quite popular.
Yeah, it's gone mainstream and we're not cool anymore because it's too popular. We're not
too
the
popular.
Cool kids. Yeah. Well, dude, there is something that I wanted to mention before we jump into this and that I would love to get your thoughts on. It's around the idea of how you've adapted with Neptune, because you mentioned before that the original product was built for a pane that now the cloud providers abstract away.
Yeah.
How have you looked at the adaptability of the product that you're building?
So I think it's pretty challenging in this space to run product because and I think there is a new wave of changes, and those kind of observations can be still relevant. So I think that very important that it is on one hand very easy today, and it used to be, and it was easy 5 years ago, to see problems. When in my team, I'm trying to explain people who reports to me that seeing problems in a startup is not a unique skill. So I would say the same here, like seeing problems in the space of MLOps or large language model ops, if we like, depends how you would define it, is not a challenge. The challenging thing is to decide what problems are temporary problems. Yes, I can solve it, right? I'm quite rather if I am student and I am still kind of skillful in coding, quite likely I would be able to solve, not in a super generic way, particular problem quickly, faster than a cloud provider, right? But will cloud provider, for instance, will it be solved in half a year, in a year? What is my defensibility? So yes, you definitely, like, one thing, you need to look at the problems, but it is not super challenging. You need to be able to figure out what is the solution. Maybe a little bit harder, but still, I won't say it is rocket science very often. But will you be able to, like, build a sustainable business around it? So you will be able to make, like, iterate, making better, like, really do something in the long run with that? It is a different story. So, and it is challenging. Maybe for some people, even this is not challenging, but I am at the level where this is where I feel challenged. And I think a framework to think about it that I realize relatively late is a way, like, it is, I think it is one-on-one of product management, but I don't have product management background. I have engineering background. So understanding what are the, like, what is the essence? What are the main jobs to be done that we want to solve, and why we should solve it? Why those jobs shouldn't be solved by somebody else? Sometimes, and if you look at the maybe landscape, competitor landscape from this perspective, you will realize that you're not necessarily always competing with, let's say, MLOps players. I wrote a blog post about DevOps space and connection to MLOps space. That was not every folk in MLOps community received it positively, because why we are bringing DevOps? We are MLOps engineers. Yes, it's true. It is specialization. I'm not saying that having just a DevOps knowledge is enough, but I think you need to look from the perspective of, like, you need to think about the core problems, and I see a lot of similarities to DevOps when it comes to core of the problems. But yes, when it comes to way how we are solving it, there are differences in details. I see something to some extent similar with large language models and how we are going to operate them. Like, it's another story. But when it comes to the product, going back to the original question, I think it is essential to really understand what is the scope of jobs to be done your product is supposed to serve, and being super focused on that. Explicit about that, also explicit when we communicate to the customers. In this space, it was also easy. I remember it was very tempting. We were able to close bigger deals with enterprises, but they had needs that I felt that they are not in line with the core jobs to be done for Neptune. So we decided to pass on those deals, even though closing one deal would double the revenue. So there was a pressure to do it, right? But I think that with MLOps and large language model ops, it is a marathon. It is not the game of one takes it all. So if you communicate to your shareholders, to your investors, what is the strategy, you can make those decisions and be careful what type of problems you are jumping to solve. It's very tempting, but very, very risky.
I think that is a fantastic introduction and summary of product management in the context of machine learning. I really like what you said about what are the temporary problems and what are the future problems. And it's clear that, like, when you started this conversation by saying, I wanted to start a product company, but I didn't have the cash, And you're clearly now trying to run a very product-oriented company. You're thinking in a very product-oriented way. And I hope the listeners appreciate it as much as I am, because it's always fascinating to hear like real product visionaries think in terms of that. I'm actually reading, funnily enough, Steve Jobs' biography right now, the Walter Isaacson one. And what you're saying, it just meshes so well with the way that Steve thought about product, right?
Because those guys are like those, they are not, but I say those guys and say Steve Jobs, okay, there was one Steve Jobs. But if you, for instance, like I really like, you can find an over YouTube record, like there was interview, I think it was 1997 with Jeff Bezos about internet. And they I think they bought or built some data centers, brick and mortar, right? And Steve and Jeff was asked, like, but you're supposed to be internet company. What your investors when you're building physical buildings? And he said something like internet schmierternet. What's important is what are like the core values we are providing to our customers. And he said vast selection, low price, and quick delivery. And those are the fundamentally the most important three traits our company or features our company should provide to our customers. And I don't care whether it's via internet or via building a building, right? And this understanding of the, like, I would say, noise cancellation, or how we can, there's a lot of thoughts, a lot of ideas, how we can really see what is the core and focusing just on that. It's simplify thinking. So I think that the leaders like Steve, like Jeff, they had this ability, like they were really capable of understanding what is vital.
Yeah. And now I'm going to ask you the question, right? I'm going to ask you the tough question here, which is the way that we build machine learning products is poised to change, right? That is what the promise of large language models are, and that is what the promise of this new era of foundation models are. You don't need to build your own model from scratch necessarily. There are large models that truly can generalize in ways that are both exciting and almost scary. So for you, as a company that exists to provide infrastructure and, as you say, help data scientists be data scientists, how has your product vision changed, or how has it stayed the same in the context of these advances?
I look at that from this perspective. I start from, maybe it sounds cliche, but if I think that we have pretty well thought company mission, and this is something that you have mission, it should change sparingly, really sparingly. You should really be careful with that. Product vision or vision for the company still should be relatively stable, but you can adjust it a little bit more frequently. So when it comes to mission, I don't see a huge change. And what is the mission then, right? Maybe I should see it. So we stated, I won't quote it one-to-one, but basically we want to give ML or support machine learning teams. Maybe they should be called AI teams if I'm talking about large language models. Maybe machine learning is too narrow, but putting this aside, we want to provide them the same or help them to get the same level of control and confidence when they are building and testing their models. Like, it's another question today, what is the model nowadays that machine learning or that ML team would be building? Is it a model, is it a prompt? But let's get to it in a moment. So control, confidence around the building and testing, similar to what we have in software space. I'm coming from software space. And today, I think the processes around DevOps, okay, there's constant development around it, but they're pretty stable and you can iterate, develop, test, deploy, and monitor on production software in a pretty kind of controllable, confident way. And I think this confidence and control over the process is a fundamental need if you want, also in ML space or AI space, if you want to truly use those models on production. So I think when you look at the large language models, I see this is even more challenging now. Because yes, we see already that there are models based on ChatGPT 3, 4 on production already, right? But I would say that mostly you see it in the use cases, where it can be wrong, or where there is a human in the loop. Sometimes human in the loop is the customer, but it is still human in the loop type of thing. Because I think that we are, to some extent, with large language models in a similar times to like early deep learning times, when we were initially kind of in the discovery phase. We spotted, we have new capabilities. And every month you had like today it is every week, you have a new announcement, what extra capabilities unlock, what is doable now. But it is still, I think that we'll see a huge progress here, but the use cases where where such models are truly used on production today are quite limited to those where human is in the loop. To really unlock it and use it also for, like you have in classical deep learning that you can control, you can test and see some validation metrics, you can have some level of confidence. We are using them in predictive maintenance in use cases where there is no human in the loop. So I think that we will see improvement, like new methods, how we are going to test, validate those new models or new ways, let's call them models. And I think it is, I don't know exactly what would be the solution, what would be the method here, but I see that this part is the area where Neptune as a company, because of the mission, will be involved. And we'll try to, like on one hand, discover those ways and support those ways of testing, validating those models, prompts. Quite likely, I expect to see some level of combination, hybrid. I don't know, with classical machine learning, deep learning models. Maybe via agents, it is one feasible way. So, you know, that today you can allow a model to ask, use Google search, use Google Wolfram Alpha to calculate something. I also expect that an agent can be another model that would be more classical one that would predict something, or vice versa, like closer to transfer learning or embedding techniques. But I think that that when you look at the core needs, let's have those models on production. We will need to have ability to test those models and control them, and it is where Neptune as a company is trying to contribute. So I think that there will be a lot of work to be done around it for those new techniques. But so it is one thing. Second thing, I still believe that the current techniques for many use cases are still relevant. And do you remember, people are not maybe anymore are talking about them so often, but auto ML concepts.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah, it's so funny. 2019 was big for auto ML.
Yeah, and there was a question, oh guys, maybe we won't need data scientists, right? I was asked by some of my customers, shall they build ML team or it will be just AutoML? And and AutoML today is called, I would say, HPO or HPO related techniques, right?
Sure.
So I think that we will be mixing different techniques depending on the problems. If we want to and we will be able to cover more and more types of problems, the amount of investment in this or related fields is growing. So we will be also discovering more stuff that is doable.
Peter, right? Which is what you want to do is provide control and confidence to the people that are in charge of these models, so to speak, whether they're data scientists or wherever they might be. And you want to do that regardless of whatever paradigm we're in, whatever context we're in. It's almost Neptune is indexed to the growth of machine learning. Machine learning is going to grow, and so Neptune will grow, and the product will evolve along the way, but the mission stays the same: control and confidence. And I love that.
Well, there is one thing that I wanted to jump into when it comes to just something that you said earlier, and you kind of sprinkled it into the conversation around the experiment tracking now becoming prompt tracking, and if that is going to be the evolution. And I would love to hear your thoughts on that, because it feels like there is a definite need for prompt tracking, but I don't know that experiment tracking is going to 100% go away. It still feels like there's a ton of use cases for that. And so how are you looking at both of those?
I said this sarcastically.
Okay.
Hey, Laszlo here. If you're serious about MLOps, you hit subscribe right now.
So again, I am looking from jobs to be done perspective. So in a short time perspective, let's say 1 year perspective, and this is what I see, and I can share with you. We are seeing more traction and demand for experiment tracking, even without large language model. I think it is a side effect of bigger investments into broadly speaking AI. So yes, we have a new big sun that makes everything else looks way smaller, right? But the reality is that there are a lot of synergies. So I think it is why we see it. But when it comes to experiment tracking, let's discuss what it is about. By the way, I really don't, but we use this because, like, maybe you will be using with MLOps name. We use experiment tracker because it is what market understand. But if you look at the jobs to be done of an experiment tracker, they are way beyond just experimenting. Experimenting sounds pure research, no production. So I would say that main jobs to be done of an experiment tracker would be about, on one hand, when you are building models, you want to understand what is happening, you want to understand the building process, you want to debug it, you want to compare it with other experiments. So in this way, you would understand whether the model you're building is going into the right direction or not. You want to version it, so you have some level of reproducibility, some way to maybe share particular model or share it for a feedback. And you want to make it in a way that you can hand the model over to an ops team. So from this perspective, when I think about prompt engineering, that is quite a different way of building models. I'm not even sure that we should be calling prompt engineering as a model building process, right?
Oh yeah.
Because the model is stateless. When you think about, fine-tuning, for instance, is not available for the latest models. It is for GPT-3, but GPT 3.5 and 4, as far as I remember, you cannot fine-tune it.
Yes, sir.
So you're left with how you will craft prompt, plus more, right? You can configure agents and build a prompt in a sequential way using different models. So yes, it is engineering, but here we are talking about building phase. How I would understand how does it work, etc. So yes, I see that, and it is on our roadmap. I see a support of prompt visualizations or chain visualizations. Integration with LangChain is an obvious thing, but it's just the beginning. I think that to really support ML, maybe not only ML, teams that are building such models and using them in production, we will eventually would also need to think about how we are going to support, and what are the methods, how we are going to validate those prompts, because today it is very much human opinion, right? I'm looking at this prompt, this prompt looks better. There are ways to there are ideas. Let's do this validation also with foundational models that would be judging which set of prompts is better. But by the end of the day, we would also need to figure out how we are testing prompts that would symbolize models. We will need to think about how we are going to what will be the techniques we can really use in order to update those models. Because those models, if you are asking very questions that's with generic context, maybe you don't need to update, or you can just update with the new version of GPT available. But if you are building, let's call it a solution based on foundational model that is doing something specific with your data, then maybe fine-tuning, maybe it would be done by an agent that would ask your kind of smaller classical model for some prediction, and the prediction will be taken into consideration by the foundational model. So I think we will also need to be able to connect the dots. What is using what, which version? So it is very much what Experiment Tracker is doing today. So I think that it shouldn't be called Prompt Tracker. It would be even worse name than Experiment Tracker. I don't like Experiment Tracker as well. I'm not sure. Somebody crafted a name, Evaluation Store.
Oh yeah.
It sounds to some extent close. I'm not good in figuring out names. Plus, you know how it is with names. You can name something as you wish. Maybe it will be super accurate. But what is important is how people are, what the market understand. Yeah. That's why we stick to Experiment Tracker. But I think that set of jobs to be done, at least for our understanding of Experiment Tracker, is a little bit broader. And prompt engineering will be one of the techniques. Relevant, very important. We will support it, but it is not the end.
It's basically getting that whole view and knowing all of the lineage and knowing everything about it from
exactly
I kind of look at it as the control pane, and being able to sit back and say, okay, I understand everything that is happening within this use case, or what I'm trying to do with this job to be done. What's my end state? And getting to that end state, there's a million different things that have happened. And so I want to be able to see all of these with a quick glance if I need to. So I like that.
It is super important. It is super important if you are talking about production.
Is it?
Because you need to have confidence and kind of level of control, right?
Yeah.
From technical point of view, but I believe I'm maybe not the biggest fan of regulations, but I think some level of regulations audits will be more bigger topic in the future.
Yeah. I mean,
so you will need to have some level of order and control what you've been doing and how, not only from engineering perspective, but I'm motivated mostly by engineering needs, like having order, control, process, being able to reproduce stuff, being able to compare stuff, being able to say, this is better, but it is not, I feel it is better. It is better because we've performed those tests. Here are the results. It is why we are making this call. So
I think this has been a great conversation. We have touched on a lot here, especially when it comes to thinking about the way that machine learning will be in the future, what kind of company Neptune is going to be to accommodate that, what the future of the experiment tracking category is. I kind of want to ask you, as we wrap up this conversation here, Piotr, 2 years from now, what is your prediction, or what is the future that you believe we'll be skating towards, right? I want to get a sense of, as we talked about product vision, right? How do you think the machine learning workflow will look like 2 years from now? And what kinds of tools will people need? What's your prediction there?
Okay. I was not kind of prepared for this question, but
That's the best way to do it. It's off the
yeah,
cuff.
yeah. I think that we'll definitely have numerical methods to test and validate models built on that are built with or next to foundational models. So this will be kind of under control. I also believe we'll be having defined ways how we combine classical models that I don't feel that they won't be relevant. I believe they will be relevant, but for a specific tasks that are less generic. So you don't have a lot of public data to maybe predictive maintenance type of problems, recommender systems, things like that. So we'll have ways of combining foundational models with classical models, and I think MLOps tech stack or community will need to understand how to use it in a controllable way. I also believe that because of the tech markets, I would say correction, it is tougher. For us, for Neptune, we have been always building a company in a kind of marathon game in mind. So we have not spent a lot of money. So we are still, when it comes to amount of money, we burn super lean. But I think that what would be good for players like Neptune, that is a more point solution than end-to-end platform, the good thing is that we will know with whom it makes sense to integrate. So we will be able to provide more end-to-end solutions, not being end-to-end solution. Because for us, it was always a problem. If you're selling to enterprise, we are components doing experiment tracker. Yes, great, but man, I have a problem. I need to provide tech stack to my ML organization. And I wanted to have, here's an end-to-end solution. Here's the whole solution. Neptune is here. Here you can pick up one of the partners. But it was problematic because this market was so crowded. We didn't have money to integrate with everybody, right? So I think we'll have some level of natural selection. There will be less players, less leaders, but more clear categories that will be well integrated. So on one hand, I see a lot of development in end-to-end platforms, but I am not a big fan. I don't see a lot of end-to-end platforms in software space. I think we'll have more clear categories of point solutions that are well integrated. So I think this market is, I would call it way more mature market. On the other hand, I'm super curious to see what would be what is the cap or where is the selling for capability of the current methods and what are the new methods that are coming. So what is the true potential here? But this part I cannot predict. 2 years ago, I wouldn't be able to predict. I didn't know, even though I was following this space very closely, that we'll be able to do what we are able to do now with foundational models.
Yeah, I love the way that you put that. And it's so funny. I just want to say, at the same time that we're talking about machine learning, we still have problems with Wi-Fi. So I don't know if the whole world is going to be solved. But Demetrius and I, during the course of this conversation, had some Wi-Fi problems. So maybe, some real world things to solve. But I think that the vision that you lay out there in terms of knowing exactly where you'll be able to embed and connect in with other sort of infrastructure providers to create the sort of end-to-end ecosystem, and the fact that we'll have those numerical methods, as you said, that give us the fine-tuned control and the precision that we need in order to scale these systems. I just love that. And I got to say, it's very good for not having thought about this before. And honestly, you probably have. So I'm going to call it a little bit of cheating. But Peter, thank you so much for joining us, for making it a great conversation, for sharing us your product vision, for giving us a preview into the way Neptune's thinking about the future. I'm long Neptune, and it was a great conversation. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, guys. Really happy to be part of the biggest MLOps podcast. I think even bigger than MLOps, depending on the name, podcasts out there. Thank you, guys.
There we go. Awesome.
Demetrius, any last words here?
Yeah, this has been great.
Perfect. Thank you, guys.
This is Mike Daldalso, co-founder and CEO of Tecton. MLOps community is the best way to stay in the loop on the latest MLOps news and best practices. It's also a great way to connect with experts and get support from an amazingly helpful community. Subscribe and stay in the loop.